Hello and welcome to episode 167 of The Adventures of Captain Dragoon, Foundry Author Extraordinaire, and his sidekicks, Greendragoon, Markhawkman, and his lovely secretary, DuncanIdaho.
Oh, secretary. I'm either going to just be a completely token character or
you get
off.
you get to be Constance Goodhart.
Do I get to survive?
Yes.
Probably not.
Okay. Oh,
I'm told the good guy always lives.
I don't think they used to kill off women back in, like 40s sci-fi.
Oh.
I don't know that for sure because I haven't watched a lot of it, but
To be honest, back in the day, they very rarely killed anyone.
That's true.
Yeah, in the
At least
classic
anyone
serials.
who was a named character.
Yeah, including villains.
I like
The
killing
closest
ninjas just
I've
come back to
gotten
life.
The closest I've gotten to watching that sort of sci-fi is like, a few minutes of Forbidden Planet when I caught it on TV one time.
Yeah. About
Even
MST3K?
or not, if you want to, you could go and watch the original Flash Gordon series on YouTube.
What was it?
One of excellent things you can find on YouTube.
During the early MST3Ks, they used to do shorts, and there was this one called Commander Cody that reminded me a lot of Captain Proton.
Yeah, and then you've also got a bunch of feature-length feature-length movies in the same vein. So just sort of up from the serial, but still the exact same plots, exact same types of characters.
See, one hilarious thing about the movie they made about Flash Gordon is that there were a lot of people who looked at it and they're like, "What? This is crap. This is incredibly hokey," and apparently didn't realize that that's what the original was. The original Flash Gordon was one of the most corny movie TV shows ever made.
I don't know. I think we as Star Trek fans can kind of appreciate. We look through an awful lot of camp when looking back at the original series.
Yes.
The genre at the time was basically it was very much in the same style, and that even continues on through Doctor Who because that's kind of this following up from the same thing because it's started up. What was it? Early 60s. Oh crap! Well, I'm terrible at Doctor Who trivia, but it's basically
it was like 66 or 65.
Yeah. So that subverted the genre in a few ways, but it still kept up sort of the hokey premises, and has just sort of continuously modernized it. But it's sort of like it stands out from that. Like it's like if you go back to those Mystery Science Theaters that show off some of those. Some of those styles of movies. It's just that was basically 1950s, 1940s sci-fi. It was very over-dramatized, very sort of... It very much played to the stage drama, but not necessarily in any realistic way. They just indulged the fantastical.
I imagine it kind of lent itself to that because of the quality of the sets. You probably had a rock wall that you could only film one way, so it probably felt like a stage.
I would say that's an accurate assessment. Although they did sometimes go and come up with some things that were really, really cool. It's just one of those things where you see it from one camera angle, it looks nice, and then you stop and realize, like, wait a second. Maybe they're only showing one camera angle because they built that part of the set and nothing else.
Then move a plant in front of it. You have a completely different set.
Well, for example, there is the regular Flash Gordon TV show. There's also this one weird spin-off variation of it, which is like a bizarre alternate universe where it's a lot more like Star Trek than Flash Gordon normally was, because normally Flash Gordon was this guy who spent more time walking than using spaceships.
Didn't they remake one of those? I want to say maybe like 10 years ago on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yes, that actually was Flash Gordon. However, that version was actually more faithful to the original source material.
Hmm.
People thought it was incredibly hokey and cheesy, and
I'd say
It
that's
was.
what were they expecting?
You know, I read something funny. This is a complete tangent, but I read something funny on Reddit the other day. It was somebody who was watching TNG for the first time and wondering when they were going to stop copying TOS episodes.
About never.
Season 2, season
Obviously
3.
there are various explanations for that, but I find it funny because the complaint that everyone, well, not everyone, but that certain fans were leveling at TNG before it had aired, is that they were complaining that it wasn't TOS.
And they did.
And here's a guy complaining that it is. This has struck me as funny.
Yeah, I mean, I was just really struck when I really sat down and watched season 1 on streaming for the first time. So as a continuous thing that I'm able to see how they're building out the episodes. And I just was really shocked by, what was it, the second or third one where the Psi 2000 virus gets out on the Enterprise and they have the same plot, but with just basically substituted elements, and it didn't work. It didn't work as well because it felt a lot more contrived.
And I think season 1 in general is more of those growing pains.
Scripts from Phase 2, and obviously Roddenberry was involved, and he would not be the first writer to recycle stuff. I mean, Aaron Sorkin recycled a whole bunch of stuff from Sports Night for the West Wing, so it happens.
And I'm already thinking about rebooting the Starfleet security files. So.
See, season 1 actually had several things in it that were extremely creative plots that, while they weren't necessarily completely different than anything we've seen before, they weren't as similar as most of the other stuff you got, even later on. I mean, for example, the episode with the Angel 1 planet. That was one of those where I'm like, it's not so much that it's better, it's just that it's doing it from a different perspective. It's, I guess you could say, refreshing. I don't know.
What were you going to say?
It's not really a villain of the week or disaster of the week thing. It's more of a who are we going to meet and get and learn about this week?
The conundrum of the week.
Yeah.
So obviously we've got Captain Proton on the brain because we were we were somewhat successfully actually making black and white sets and costumes last time out.
Which, by the way, I wanted to show off to everyone who hadn't seen it on Twitter. Yes. I ended up doing kind of a promo image from our set we built last time with our black and white characters, and I came up with this.
Yes, it looks awesome.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was really pleased. I kind of put in the Twitter, or commented this when I posted it on Twitter. It's like, no, really, this map is in black and white. I didn't Photoshop this or anything.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah, I just like
it. Really works.
I just kind of find it funny is that there seems to be a lot of danger, but it's just the villain just laughing by himself. So you just kind of have to imagine what he's done. It's like, I have sold your ship off to the Ferengi.
Yeah.
You will never find it, for it is in many parts.
Insert mustache twirling here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, our heroes escaped the Doom Forest. Find out next week on the continuing adventures of Captain Proton.
I was really pleased with how my duplicate Proton and Buster Kincaid turned out.
Oh, those are good.
Seriously though, part of the reason why I mentioned the whole thing with the old black and white 1940s version of I keep getting those two names mixed up. Flash Gordon. I keep wanting to say Buck Rogers, even though that was a much later show and completely different. Don't know why. Anyway, so Flash Gordon, the old black and white one, was the same sort of cheesy sci-fi that seems to have inspired Captain Proton.
I think there's no doubt about that.
And I think in a lot of ways, like science fiction always is kind of building on itself.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I imagine they didn't want to or couldn't get the rights to something like Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers. Or
the same problem George Lucas had.
Or they wanted to specifically tailor it to so that Paris and Kim could have the exact roles that they needed.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, like I said, there's a whole lot of things that are similar. Like you have the bad guy who reminds me of Ming the Merciless a lot.
Chaotica?
Chaotica, there were several different female supervillain style characters that showed up in Flash Gordon.
Like,
well, I mean, they were kind of doing that with Arachnia.
Well, see, because one of the things is that in one of the episodes, Flash ends up having to deal with this woman who is the queen of an ice kingdom, who happens to have an amulet that she can use to conjure up monsters or something, I think was what it was. Not exactly a harmless individual, especially since she didn't really like anyone except her subjects.
Hey, that's something we could use. You know, are there targs or reptiles that are basically gray?
Oof.
No.
Not that I know of. They're green.
More sort of green or brown or that sort of thing.
Green or brown, yeah.
That's too bad.
Jackal Mastiffs might be the closest, but they might have a little bit of color.
Wait. Jackal Mastiffs, you're talking about those Klingon wolf things, aren't you?
Yep, the ones that were first shown on Ropente.
They're mostly white, but I think maybe kind of bluish too.
Mm-hmm.
Their faces are black.
Yeah, I was a little weird. That it's like it might be black or it might be like dark purple. I wasn't quite sure.
I don't remember.
But those things have very little, if any, color.
Yeah, so they might work in a pinch.
I think there might be some yellow up too. But
the other thing too,
obviously, some of these things we have to get close enough rather than 100% because of just the nature of what we're working with here.
And I noticed as we were kind of building this, the difference between cool gray and warm gray became really apparent.
Oh, yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. But, we have to just basically keep in mind is that we're building a black and white episode in the Foundry. We're going to have limitations.
A lot. More than usual.
Yes.
So,
it's just kind of not meant to work that way.
Not really. Dragoon, you've been kind of working on coming up with a plot, right?
Yep.
Why don't you take us through that?
Including my add-ons or just Dragoon stuff?
I'm taking it, showing what I've got so far. Hang on. I got to pull it up here.
Did I post the commentary I did on that?
On the forum, on Twitter, you did.
Okay.
I haven't checked the actual... let's see, the other...
Oh, that's right. I couldn't figure out how to add it to the Google document because I don't actually use those on a regular basis. Oh, well.
All right, so...
Okay.
I basically wrote up half a mission. It basically gets to the point where there's the twist and things start to...
is classic.
And Captain Proton and the thing from the 8th dimension.
Yes.
Where the thing is... because I have literally had no idea for what to call this MacGuffin object, which is why I keep saying insert MacGuffin here. It's like one of those things. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just the central thing that everybody's fighting over.
And maybe call it a dimensional distortion crystal.
Yeah, or some equally wacky name that sounds like 1940s.
I got it. The Captain Proton and the Transpectral monster. Because that kind of fits with what I was thinking about for this one.
Well, okay.
Or transpectral visitors.
Or transpectral visitors, or just the monster from the 8th dimension.
Oh.
All right. So.
Yeah. Anyway.
The general gist that I was thinking about is that your ship is called into Earth Space Dock to basically go through security training for your security staff. And so they've set up holo emitters all over the ship, and they're going to be running through scenarios of like boarding actions and whatnot. Hey, because I mean, when is the Federation not in conflict with these days?
Or in those days either, for that matter.
And so I had the idea of having this lieutenant who is getting all of this set up, being like interesting. Hey, I just found this like lost episode of Captain Proton. So I'm kind of figuring that Paris could have published the other Captain Proton episodes as holo novels, and so
or written his own. Yeah,
assuming that they weren't written by him to begin with. But anyway, I mean,
now actually, Voyager at least hinted that it was something that he was a fan of more than anything else.
Yeah, I think at least those the episodes that he and Kim were playing probably weren't written by him, but we could say that this one is.
Yeah. All right. Well, so either way, and I actually after I kind of started to put together, I realized there's like a perfect character already in the Foundry who would be perfect for this, and that is Amanda Barkley. And I kind of threw this out, and everybody seemed to like it. And in fact, was it XR377?
Yes.
Actually said go for it. In fact, go for it. In fact, he volunteered to write Amanda's dialogue, which is cool because it would take me a while to kind of get her cadence. But anyway, so so she invites you to go try out this new Captain Proton mission, and it starts out mostly normal. I kind of threw in a little thing in there to say that, she hadn't loaded in your physiometric profile or something, and so that's the reason your captain and bridge officers are still in color. It's because the program doesn't know to make you black and white yet. But either way, you kind of play along, and
it's a beta version.
Yeah, and so you get through, and it's basically this kind of brings up this new villain called Son of Chaotica, and I'm thinking that after writing it several times, I'm thinking that name could probably use a little work.
I think Son of Chaotica.
No, absolutely leave it.
We got to have. He refers to himself as the Son of Chaotica as well.
Yeah, it's just an awkward thing to write down.
And the Son of Chaotica, will have my revenge.
Yes. Before we move on, I want to point out that it would be a really fun thing to put a disclaimer in the beginning but before the thing that people read before they accept the mission, telling people that for best results that they should make their character black and white.
If they wanted to, I mean, but I'm a little worried that not many people are going to want to take the time to do that, and really, you have to be an alien to do it.
Yeah,
I once played a character, or I once played a mission where the mission advised you that for best results, you needed to dress up in a Section 31 uniform before playing the mission.
Yeah. I think for this one though,
once we make those things, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when like the people listening to this, when we publish this, and we will publish it, because we can't not make this at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, though, it's basically it'll be known for as the black and white episode. So I think people who are interested can probably just sort of do it before they play.
Well, there's sort of two approaches you can take to a thing like that, where you want people to sort of RP in your mission. You can either come up with an explanation for why they look like their default look, whatever the player wants them to look like, or you can have some kind of disclaimer at the head says, to really get the full mission, you should dress like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
you could do it either way.
I'm kind of one of those people that likes to try and take limitations like this and turn it to an advantage. So for the start of the mission, they are in color, and then we throw in some kind of explanation for why they're in color. But the mission goes through, and they chase down this Son of Chaotica, who is trying to get this device to resurrect his father. Big megalodramatic plot. And except that when the object is touched, like the whole program shifts, and suddenly you're no longer playing the characters in Captain Program. You're just suddenly there, and the Captain Proton characters are also there, and everybody now sees you as you really are. And so
here's an idea. I mentioned the whole like this dimensional distortion crystal thing. Maybe you could say that the holodeck program is attempting to mimic the properties of an object that distorts the a holodeck in and of itself. So that's attempting to create this weird crystal thing that in and of itself causes the holodeck to malfunction.
Yeah, I mean, so even on top of this, not only are you now you in this scenario, your ship is also here, and you and Amanda Barkley are now like in color, and obviously Amanda Barkley would be the only person in this who had been black and white, but and the idea is that you have been sucked into this Captain Proton world now, instead of it just being a holodeck simulation. And so you have to get out. And what I kind of figured at the very end, and skip to the end spoilers, is that it turns out that it was actually a prank by Tom Paris, and he had like intended to play it on the Voyager crew. And it basically utilizes the holometers that were on your ship for those scenarios. It basically tied into those and made your ship think that they were in the Captain Proton universe.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
But for it to work, they have to think that for it to work, they have to think that they've actually been sucked into this absurd Captain Proton world, and not just are playing characters in it. So that was kind of my thought, and obviously there was a whole lot of like stuff in the second half of the mission that I hadn't figured out yet.
Yeah. So, like, I put a few thoughts down on that one, and my sort of take on this would be to make it more of a classic holodeck scenario gone wrong, because holodeck malfunction, the characters now think they're real and we're in danger, is kind of we don't have to do a lot of work to establish that in Star Trek.
No, it's kind of Trek thing.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of basic. So I kind of took that and just sort of worked a little bit with the background. So my idea was to have the malfunction. Like, I really like that Captain Paris is playing a joke on you, because it sort of, we can sort of build a little bit into that with the fact that we know him in Stowe. So, I mean, that just offers the player some good dialogue options. My, like, an alternative idea for me would also allow, like, to have a sort of a pretty easy MacGuffin too, is that the holodeck malfunction was caused by Amanda Barkley's pet Eppo, which I have just invented for this story, who escapes and then gets into the holodeck subsystems, and then the holodeck goes wrong there, but it becomes central to the program because the Eppo is the MacGuffin. So it's colored.
You have to team up with Captain Proton to find the Eppo.
To rescue the Eppo, because the son of Chaotica has the Eppo, and he sees that it's in color. That color is, for him, it's transpectral radiation, which he thinks can bring his father back to life. So his idea is to make a transpectral anti-death ray, to use that on his father to bring him back to life in color and more powerful than ever. So the plot goes on from confrontation, find out that Amanda Barkley's Eppo has been captured, it's in danger, you're in danger, the ship is completely disabled by the rampant holodeck program, and we've kind of got to run it through to its conclusion. The thing I would sort of add on to that is sort of general plot line is also a miscellaneous, just sort of filling out the universe a little bit. So having another sub-faction in there that Amanda Barkley has to negotiate with as Queen Arachnia, and that was the cave people. So you have to enlist their help to overcome to overcome the Son of Chaotica, and have
to ally with the cave people of Zeta 3.
Yes, and have some.
Go
ahead.
I just wanted to mention a few of the more interesting things that have happened as a result of holodeck malfunctions in Star Trek. One of them is actually from TNG, where they actually managed to get the holodeck to damage things outside the ship. This was the episode with the Krieger wave generator. They somehow managed to create a replica of a Krieger wave generator in the holodeck that was so realistic that the thing actually started producing Krieger waves.
He also had the World War II program running in Voyager without the safeties on, and that was blowing up the ship, too.
Then there were 2 episodes, one of which was a Captain Proton mission episode, where they somehow managed to open dimensional rifts with the holodeck. I don't remember exactly how those worked. Well, one of them was actually like a Viking thing. So some entity from some other universe got lodged in the hollow matrix or something. I don't know.
It was a stellar. It was a stellar life form, and it just happened to occupy the role of Grendel in the Beowulf myth. That I think it was Kim who was running it at first.
I remember that being not such a great episode.
Yeah, I know. Harry Kim's holodeck programs were just so much worse than Tom Paris's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. See, that was one of those where it's just like the nature of the holodeck malfunction. You just look at it, it's like, okay, I have no idea how that works that way, but it apparently does.
Yeah. So it's just the holodeck malfunction is a great little. It's a plot device. I would just say it's its own little trope in Star Trek where we can basically just invoke the holodeck is malfunctioning, and then people are just sort of on board with that.
which is interesting because
say, things are happening because Q, and people will go on with it.
Yeah. Almost every episode with a holodeck has the holodeck malfunction in some way. Almost every single one.
Yeah.
I mean, it even happened in the animated series.
Yep. So anyway, though, for what I was kind of going with for the plot, so it was kind of straightforward. Have that mid-mission turn with the cave people that we have to. Barclay has to sort of take on the role of Arachnia, sort of plays foil to Captain Proton a bit, since he sort of encourages this maybe a little too vigorously. So there's a little bit of an opportunity for character dynamics there. And for Barclay to take on a more active role through the mission. And then through the assault on Captain Proton, the Son of Chaotica's Doom Fortress, the cave people do give us a little bit of a leverage to have cannon fodder and to use them in humorous ways. Because I was thinking that they could be a little too dedicated to Queen Arachnia and then a little too willing to give their lives in service. So we have ridiculous casualty figures and ridiculous solutions to small problems that involve the cave people basically, vaporizing themselves, exploding. And...
Ooh, I just thought of something. You could say that the cave people feel indebted by their honor to serve Arachnia because Arachnia saved them from the actual main bad guy, but they hate Arachnia so much that even though their honor compels them to serve her, they keep doing things to make their servitude, shall we say, shorter.
Yeah, maybe. The idea for the cave people, though, is just kind of based on a lot of. If you kind of go through classic tropey sci-fi, like in Mystery Science Theater, there's sometimes the species of the mutants, the cave people. It's basically just the horrifying people with a little bit of extra rubber on their face that have a servile role in a society, kind of like the mutants in This Island Earth. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the evolution of this. So it's kind of just bringing in another trope from that era of classic 1920s.
So when you go and make the costume, what you want to look for is something that looks like what they could do in the 60s or would do.
The salt vampire hair is why I proposed the cave people.
That's a good one.
And also just basically give them jumpsuits. So something that is so completely low budget on this one. So anyway, though, just
like
and
the
it's
mirror,
also
the mirror universe sash that's just like basically a cloth tied around their waist.
Oh yeah. Just the jumpsuit.
If you can change color up.
You can, and you can also make that suitably dark as well. So anyway, that was just to sort of like change the pace a little bit mid-mission and to sort of give another angle to the Captain Proton universe that also references some older sci-fi. But anyway, it just leads to Sultan.
Well, and I like giving Amanda Barkley something to do, and to make her have to play as Queen Arachnia. That would be awesome.
Yeah, because
I
it's
could
also
see a lot of fun out of that.
Yeah. Especially with like her being a little bit more sympathetic to the cave people, but the cave people are basically just full on that, she's Arachnia, this ruthless spider queen. She tries to be nice to them, but they don't don't buy it.
I think it's a trick.
Be like,
yeah.
Like, ooh, nice cave people. I am your queen. Worship me. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And then, I guess maybe have the cave people act like anytime Arachnia is polite or nice to them, that they think she's mocking them and making fun of them.
Or just like...
Or they think she's threatening them.
Undeserved pity. It's like, no, we don't deserve this kindness, and then they just engage in a plan to blow themselves up in some ridiculous way. Like, we'll ram 13,000 starships into their Doom Fortress, and that will take down the shield slightly enough for you to get through a small crack.
All in your name, my queen.
Yes. But that leads to the classic melodramatic confrontation with the son of Chaotica. He's got his transpectral anti-death ray. He turns it on Chaotica's mummified body, and it just creates a giant singularity. And you escape that. The Doom Fortress collapses. The program ends.
The program shuts off.
And then everything's fine.
And it turns out the son of Chaotica's real name is Leslie.
Or Randy, or something like that. You haven't seen the last of Randy Chaotica. Or Jim.
But I like your Epo idea because it does, give, opportunity for a classic line like, "Come on, Buster, we've got to save that Epo."
Yeah, and it's also one of those. It also works that we also have very brightly colored Epos, and it sort of contrasts nice with the environment. It gives Amanda this, emotional stake to it that you and the player too, because they want to see the Epo. They want to see the Epo saved. They want to make sure it'll be okay. And it also invokes why we have the malfunction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
that's a good one.
And we can also put an Epo on a pedestal and then hook that up to just some type of death ray.
Yeah, some sort of elaborate looking death ray machine.
And
kind of like
the
in
anti-death ray.
Kind of like in that Romulan mission where you're where they have the Tal Shiar guy telling you to incinerate the Epos with Thaleron radiation.
No, we're not going to hurt the
I don't
Epo.
want to. I don't want to hurt
it. It's transpectral.
It's the opposite of that.
It's the transpectral radiation coming from the Epos being harnessed by the son of Chaotica for his anti-death ray.
Or that's what he thinks he's doing.
I feel like the transpectral. It should end with the transpectral generator just like blowing up, and then that just is what ends the program. There's a huge explosion, and they're back on the holodeck.
And then it's wait, what?
Yeah. And my the last idea I had on this one was, I'm going to go with my alternate on this one. At the end of the program, you also sort of encounter a maintenance crew that's been trying to help get you out of the holodeck, and it's a guy in a red jumpsuit and 2 exocomps. As a Mystery Science parody on that one. And they've been trying to help, but they're just kind of got a little too into watching the program.
Maybe an exocomp and a Prelor.
A gold Prelor, and then
it's hard to justify why that's in Starfleet.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do something pretty good though with this is something I've been bouncing around for future episodes, but you can create a pretty convincing looking android with just a normal uniform, Terran Task Force hands, and then the Undine reputation helmet that we have. And you can color that yellow. And the hands yellow. And there you go.
I mean, I don't think we need to overdo it. I think the couple of exocomps, maybe like one... do we have exocomps in the Foundry?
Yeah, we do.
Do we have the tactical variant?
We got a couple of variants.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I use these in I tried to use. Actually, I think they might still be in Apex. Because just as an Easter egg, I basically in that first shuttle bay, I think they're been underneath the grating is just the exocomps having a powwow under the floor. They're meeting for some nefarious purpose in Starbase Magellan.
Yeah, I don't think you want to call it too much attention to it. What you want to do is just, you know, have a tiny little conversation with you guys and say, yeah, we were working on getting you out, and well, why didn't you get us out? And so we were just
we ran out of popcorn. No, but if you just like name the exocomps Tom and Crow, and then like maybe call the guy Nelson or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good old parody.
Yep.
Maybe we should make
be like when I put the guys from Top Gear in my Klingon spotlight mission.
Yeah.
Maybe make the exocomps like names like acronyms of Tom and Crow, so it's not too obvious that we're.
Yeah, I didn't use their actual names when I did.
Or you can just do sort of like along the same line. So Jim and then Sparrow. Yeah, or you could also just do it backwards too.
Yeah, you could do something like
Mott and Rock.
Yeah.
Mott and Rock.
I don't know. We can do something. Or even just having them there would be sufficient because it's just the guy. It's just the guy in the red jumpsuit gives the plaintiff explanation of like, oh yeah, we're trying to totally get you out of there, but
no, yeah, you don't even have to name him. You just say says another guy in a red jumpsuit, and that's his name.
And for the two robots, you don't actually have to give them names either. You can just like leave them as unnamed NPC contacts.
Something like that, anyway. We'll obviously be working on this project as we go, because we got other things we got going. So let's talk about some news. Obviously, the big news this week is the revamp of the Refit Constitution class, which, by the way, Dragoon happens to be flying there. He actually couldn't make it here to the Delta Quadrant Dyson Sphere on his character that flies the T6 version because he has not leveled that version very high. Was that correct?
No, yeah. I had made a character a while back when I managed to get the T6 Connie, and so she is only level 48 at the moment.
Yeah, so what you're looking at is the T2 version, but, same diff as far as the looks go, because they all have the same parts. And then, of course, I'm flying the new Miranda. Come to find out that Thomas was working on the Connie on his spare time, and it sort of coincided with the revamp of the Miranda because, of course, it uses many of the same parts and textures and that sort of thing. So it was kind of logical for it to happen. The other thing, of course, is that the Soyuz class is now available for as a costume option if you get the Fleet T6 Reliant. And all of these parts are in the Foundry.
Yay!
Which is good.
Soyuz too?
Yes, the Soyuz. If you load up a Miranda class in the costume creator, you have options for the T6 Reliant version and
cool.
the Soyuz. And all the whole options as well.
Nifty.
Whole material. So, it's all in there. It's good stuff. So, if you wanted to start making, TMP era missions or, Wrath Con era missions, that sort of thing, have at it because you got everything you need. Except,
Well.
except, like consoles with the old style LCARs on it. That would be pretty cool.
I've kind of shown recently that you can actually build that hallway because I may have built it for something else recently. I'll just go ahead and share the screenshot of that. Let's see.
It's one of those things where you can do a hallway on one of those ships, but don't go to the bridge.
No, actually, you can go to the bridge because they for the the bridge is totally an option because what they did for the Prometheus bridge was just redress the Excelsior bridge, which is the Enterprise B bridge. Yeah. So if you actually
do we have a Prometheus bridge in the Foundry?
Yeah, we do.
We do.
It's the first. Yeah, it's the first. It was in my first Starfleet Security. So cool. We do have that. Actually, we have it. There's two. Like I also have this eStore pack. I know there's two options for the. There's two basic options for that bridge. One of which includes the classic railings, which is period appropriate. But then for the Prometheus, I think they added some swooping bits, which would not be period appropriate. But I think it's the better version for a TMP era is in there. So if you want, you can use the Prometheus bridge, and that would work for that era. Like the consoles won't be exactly right, but it'll be as good as we can get.
As good as we can get.
The screenshot I just sent was, I mean, that was what I've made so far for the Enterprise B. And I'm not quite sure now how far I'm going to be going with that project, but that's what I've got right now.
I was going to say, do you remember that bridge I built like a few months back?
Oh, yeah, that one.
That was actually originally intended as an attempt to try and build a Connie refit, and then I got sidetracked and built that instead.
Yeah, and that would work out just perfectly fine too. You might have to swap out the. Actually, you might not, because I was just thinking on that when you use the modern ESD consoles, but that should work. That might work too.
Well, I mean, I had kind of figured that you could maybe do it or get something close with the civilian consoles that have that really muted control scheme.
Yeah, and then there's some of those ones that are like lifted from the Defiant that would probably work too. Lifted from the Defiant bridge. So anyway, I mean, there's a lot of options for building custom maps in the Foundry that work for that era. You've got a bridge that's one bridge that would be appropriate. I think it's just like when you're looking at the default maps, you probably don't want to use some of the default Fed interiors because those are going to look a little too modern. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, you might be able to redress it.
Oh, yeah, for redressing. I think that might be a little asset heavy, but you just kind of have to see what you what works before given project and all that.
I'd say your hallway looks a little asset heavy too.
Yeah, that is very asset heavy, but then again, it's a custom build, so they all have to be asset heavy.
Yeah, we can't make simple things.
No, especially Federation hallway. I mean, the more complicated you can make that, the better.
Speaking of complicated, did you guys see the promo pic that was released this week for the transporter room from Discovery? Although it probably will be the transporter room from the Shenzhou rather than the Discovery.
Are you
itself,
sure? I think that might be Discovery.
It's hard. I don't know. Cannot really say at this point.
Because the one thing I'd say is that if you spent that much time building a transporter room for a ship that's going to be blowing up soon.
Well, we don't know that it's going to be blown up.
I think
we don't know. We don't know anything about the plot.
Oh, I know, but I'm willing to bet that that's Discovery. Just because it's like maybe it's just because I want that to be Discovery. Okay. I want that to be
how much do you bet?
I bet an Epo.
Epos are non-tradable.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. How about this? I will bet you one master key that is the transporter room from the Shenzhou.
Okay, yeah, let's go for that.
Okay.
Yeah, one master key, Shenzhou versus Discovery.
Yes.
I think most of the first episode is going to be the Shenzhou. I think we are not going to see Discovery until pretty late.
I think we see. Discovery episode 2.
Bloodleaf says it's it could possibly be similar for both. In that case, neither of us win.
Oh,
we'll say that.
I bet we both trade each other master keys.
That would be a bit silly, wouldn't
it? Yes, it would.
But in any case, my first thought when I saw this is, this feels like something they would have built back in the 60s if they had the budget to do it.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, Dragoon. Oh crap! I just realized I didn't look at the characters before. It's Captain of the Shenzhou who's beaming out.
Oh,
oh damn it!
that was my clue.
Now
I mean, it's still not exactly 100% certain or anything, but that seems like.
Well, if it's my theory that the Shenzhou gets blown up, the captain gets killed, and then the main character transfers to a different transfers to Discovery to take down the Klingons and all that. It's like oh well.
Did we ever talk about the fact that Discovery has a release date?
Oh, yeah. I don't think so. Because that came out, what?
Remind me, what is the September? Is that right? November?
It's the end of September, I think.
End of September.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah. Very cool.
September 24th.
Getting towards July here, so July, August, September. Not too long. And the nice thing is that we're getting more and more, pictures and info and that kind of stuff from it. Which I always expected. I think people were expecting that too soon.
Well, the breathing apparatus they constructed on that whatever thing is relatively easy to. I mean, you can still. I did it again. Jumped into a train of thought. Dang it! I forgot where it was.
You talk about replicating things that we're seeing from Discovery in Stowe. I don't think you'll have to worry about like uniforms and that sort of thing because I bet you they'll put those in.
Yeah, at the very least, as a lockbox.
Yeah,
at the very least.
I'm not starting a new character for that.
You say that now, but
I have an existing character
I just don't believe you.
Do you want to take a bet on this one?
No. I do have an open character slot at the moment. But no, I actually have a character that I currently flying what is it? Tholian, the little Tholian frigate. And I'm not overly in love with it. So I might change that. To a whatever we get from Discovery character.
Although right now this character is kind of like probably would fit in the Discovery era because I'm sort of revamping my Fedman again, and that might actually get wrapped into a Foundry mission. We'll see.
All right, what other new news do we have? Yes, the Endeavor system was just announced this week, which is basically participation bonuses for doing different things, and it rolls over every couple of days. Not entirely sure what things they will be asking you to do.
Oh yeah, they sort of throw out a few examples. So like getting kills with a particular type of weapon. So say Polaron weapon, or killing a certain type of enemy. So it's basically ways of encouraging players to branch out a little bit. So I think this might be Cryptic's latest attempt to try to encourage a little bit more variation out of particular PvE behavior.
Like how people keep running only Tholian and Borg missions simply because of the fact that they're the easy ones.
Yeah, and before that it was ISA and Crystalline Eni, and those are still pretty popular.
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about.
So if the Endeavor comes up for the next 2 days, it's kill X amount of Voth. Yeah.
Or Zenkat.
I think at least part of it's going to be a way to encourage people to play queues that aren't being played right now.
Yeah. So I think that's Cryptic's idea, and they're sort of being a little low key on it. So they're not hyping it up too much because they basically said that, hey, the bonus you'll get is going to be marks, dilithium. It's going to be a consumable resource. So it's not going to be high intensity. Like there's going to be an exclusive item that you have to, play this particular thing to get it. So it's basically a nice bonus that kind of cycles up at a time scale that we don't really have a lot of things coming up. Like there's no 3-day, 2-day activities. We kind of have things spaced over weekends, over months. So it's kind of filling a gap in the world.
This stuff will be going on all week. I think they said Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So there's 3 per week.
It's basically a mini event that runs on a timer.
And then, you know, it's also one of those things that's kind of take it or leave it. It's not like it's going to really hurt you to not do it.
So yeah, I mean, I kind of see what they're going for with this and the whole trying to diversify builds and play styles. I'm just not 100% convinced it'll do much.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, I think it's, the effect is probably going to be, for Cryptic, they might see it on their numbers, like a population level thing, but day-to-day operation, it's going to be, you know, a nicety. And, you know, something that's like, oh, I've got, you know, a character that uses Polaron weapons, but it's a little underdeveloped, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, there's a thing open, or there's an endeavor open for using something that fits into that line, then hey, maybe you work on that. The one thing that did come up is that I think Endeavor progression is account level.
Yeah.
But the resources you claim, I think, are character level. So you can work on it on some other character and then pull those resources off on who needs it. So there's flexibility there.
Interesting. This is not something that has hit Tribble yet, so we don't know what it will be exactly.
No, but the upcoming Ferengi Admiralty campaign has hit Tribble.
Yes, the Ferengi Admiralty campaign has.
There is one additional bit of news from the Twitch live stream this week on that. So upcoming, there's the Ferengi Admiralty campaign, which is going to be emphasizing dilithium and latinum. And Cryptic has said that they're not willing to announce, like, do a firm announcement yet, because they're not sure what's going to be ready in time. But they're looking at adding new items to the Latinum store that are customization items. So similar to, like, probably things in the same vein as the current sunglasses or hollow emitter, stuff like that. Maybe some costume options. I did make some suggestions on that one to get the some costumes we have in the Foundry that didn't show up in game. Maybe take a look at those and see if we can get this as a new delivery method.
The science jacket.
I would also move over the the Ferengi jackets from the Lobi store over to because they're not. I mean, it made sense back when Lobi barely had anything in it, but now that Lobi's got tons of extra options, those Ferengi jackets are kind of just the low end stuff, and so they make a little more sense in the
so
GPL store.
Add items, and you know, obviously this would take art people time, so they may not want to do anything like that to flesh out the Latinum store. But what I would add is the absolute worst costumes from all of Trek.
You mean like the scant?
The scant.
Yes.
Jake Sisko's wardrobe.
What about Wesley Crusher's wardrobe?
Wesley's acting ensign thing.
Any exercise wear that was ever seen in Star Trek. Yeah. Any exercise wear.
Troy and Crusher's exercise wear, particularly.
Oh yeah. Oh, the head, like, oh god, there was one episode where it's like Wesley's playing in the holodeck with his friend, and it's snow, like they're having like a skiing thing, and they come out wearing ridiculous like snow gear and headbands. So that would be another.
The funny thing that Picard gets put on his head at the diplomatic meeting in Insurrection.
Oh yes. That is pretty iconic. I mean, come on.
I feel like this should have been a reward for diplomacy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that would have been a good one. The one thing that Bortescu, I think was who was with Kale. He did say that they are collecting data. Borticus. Bortescu is what I call the
ship.
But Borticus, yes, the ship. I just assume that they're the same. The same entity. So anyway, though, the one thing they're looking at is how to price things with the Latinum economy, because they're having difficulty getting data because there is none. And
like nobody buys stuff on the Latinum.
Yeah. So they're sort of piecing the metrics together. So just to make sure that when they add stuff, it's going to be sensible. It's not just going to be putting a lot of stuff out there that doesn't require any investment or too much investment. So
it's not like they're going to be putting costumes in there for $2 million dilithium.
Hopefully not.
Or 2 million GPL.
I can't complain about that anymore because I bought it.
Well,
so
that's a weird thing about GPL is that it's kind of an odd thing because you can definitely grind it if you really work on it. And it's not like dilithium where there's like limiters in place.
Well, and it's hard to say how much you'll be generating from this Ferengi thing yet. The Admiralty campaign. We'll have to
although I think they did price the final payout. But it does also emphasize it's a lithium as well. So it's like 30,000 dilithium, which is the same as you get from the Klingon campaign, and I think some latinum too. Yeah.
So, I mean, just kind of looking at this, I mean, somebody had suggested on like Reddit or the forums or somewhere that since we already have a Admiralty campaign that rewards dilithium, it would actually make more sense for this to reward latinum and EC.
Yeah, EC would be a good one. I think it's just like what they may have realized is that for people continuing, who continue running Admiralty campaigns, they might just run the Klingon one, because I think that might be it would make a lot of sense to sort of separate it
in as an incentive.
But I think this might be like Cryptic acknowledging that there is one thing that people grind Admiralty for, so they're just kind of feeding into that and attaching Latinum to maybe sort of encourage players to maybe have a choice between Klingon and Ferengi as the thing they continuously keep doing. Because that's kind of how I do Admiralty. It's just to do the Klingon one. The other ones are nice, and I use them for spot purposes, but the one I keep doing is Klingon.
I don't know. I mean, having the... Well, I guess now there are other ways to get cool upgrade packs.
Yeah. And the Klingon one does also, through the missions, does give a lot of EC as well. It makes sense to tie that to the Ferengi because that's kind of their thing. Even as like sort of a rebalance. But I mean, it's interesting to kind of fit the Ferengi in here.
Well, it's sort of like that one episode of, I forget whether it was TNG or DS9, where this Ferengi happens to find someone because she matches the dental records that he found. I know, weird idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just with the Ferengi, it's just sort of another side to, it still has a lot of the economic stuff. And the Ferengi could basically play to a lot of different things. So EC, Latinum, dilithium, even miscellaneous items too, because you have the R&D system really tied to the Romulan campaign. So you may even have commodities being spit out by the Ferengi campaign as just an incidental bonus. I don't know. It's interesting that we're getting a lot of this newsfeed information about upcoming systems, upcoming editions. That's kind of strongly hinting that we're approaching another season release.
Yeah, I mean, and we're starting to get due for that. When was the last season come out?
13. That was
not long ago.
Oh, crap.
But that one came out really quickly after season 12. So
yeah, it was when we were expecting the 12.5 update.
Yeah, so I mean, they either might go back to that or start a quicker cadence of season releases. I
think they, I mean, we'll see what they end up calling this. Some people have already started talking about expansion. Like, it's the next expansion. It's like, no, not yet.
I think the next expansion will be due, towards, I don't know, first quarter of next year?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, once again, there's nothing to say that they couldn't increase the cadence of expansions.
Yeah, they can do things whenever they want.
And, I mean, I think they're thinking that just because... things have been a little more subdued as far as content releases. We're getting some stuff, but not the huge amount of stuff. I think if they did do a expansion this year or possibly the beginning of next year, they might announce it at a STLV, which is one of the places they like to do big announcements like that.
Yeah, but I think it's a good observation that we aren't getting that much stuff. And the last time that kind of happened was before Legacy of Romulus. We had a couple of seasons which were really, really, really light. So it's like when Cryptic, doesn't release something, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not working on anything.
It means they're working on other things.
Yeah, it's getting packaged differently. So that's kind of how we roll. So we had we had Delta Rising, the Iconian War, but the Iconian War was really episode heavy, so Agents of Yesterday didn't actually have that much compared in terms of novel story content compared to previous releases. And that's because we had a completely different cadence prior than, what we had in Legacy of Romulus.
Well, and there's nothing to say that every expansion has to have exactly the same amount of content.
Oh, yeah. And I really liked Agents of Yesterday because it was really tight, it's focused, and, that worked for me a lot better than LOR.
So, one thing that I think we are due for is a featured episode.
Yeah.
and I think they've been laying some groundwork with the lore blogs lately.
Oh, yeah. The lore blogs have been really...
Because, we got Torg is returning, and...
the Sona were really, unambiguous.
Yeah, they've been mentioning some Sona stuff.
It was it's really unambiguous now that the Sona are involved, unless there's somehow another face-stretching species, which...
Sona lock blocks.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the leaked info about the a certain actor?
Sort of a leak.
No, yeah, I don't know. It's leaked info, and we did sort of talk about who the guest star might be on the last episode.
Yeah, and turns out we were right.
Yes.
But anyway,
obviously that episode that he'll be in will be coming, I would assume, fairly soon.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's probably it could be something like to finish off the current season and start up the next big content expansion coming from Stowe, or content update, as I think they're calling it. So
here's a question: if they are working on an expansion of some kind, and as we've seen, expansion can mean many things.
Mm-hmm.
It can mean a new faction. It cannot mean a new faction, because we didn't get a new faction with Delta Rising.
Yeah, it
can mean a big chunk of missions, or it can mean other things.
Yeah.
So what would you like to see from the next expansion?
I've written a proposal.
Of course you have. Of course you have.
Yes. I've written a proposal on that. Well, actually, the thing I was envisioning, I thought might be doable this season. So, expansion is kind of a different kettle, but I don't think this would necessarily fill that. It would just be a thing. So do we want to sort of talk about the expansion, or talk about the other transition to the other thing?
Well, let's talk about an expansion first, and then we'll transition.
Okay. Gamma Quadrant. I think that's probably...
I think a lot of people would say that, yeah.
Gamma Quadrant, but what I kind of like to see most is a new faction, Borg Cooperative. That's what I'd really like to see. And that would basically, the way I would vision it, it's not Delta Quadrant Cooperative. It's a new node of liberated Borg at Vega. And that's basically their faction hub. Mm. So you basically start off as an assimilated drone on Vega who gets liberated. The first few episodes are about taking Vega back and establishing a new cooperative, or a new sect of liberated Borg, trying to figure out how that works with the Fed, KDF Romulans, have a little bit of back and forth of that, and then lead into the main episode series with some new stuff going on with their ships and some interesting possibilities with how those ships are designed. So basically indulge the kit bash, because you have, individuals from all factions coming together and basically have ships that are basically kit bash from several different KDF Romulan and Federation starships, all mashed together with Borg parts joining the bits to make it maybe a little bit easier for the art side to, fit together these wildly different starship parts. So that'd be my thing.
I'm both fascinated and disgusted by that idea. Horribly ugly ships, but they'll be awesome because they're horribly ugly.
Well, yeah, it's kind of going along with Borg, just kind of the Borg from Enterprise, just sort of just taking ships and then just basically
adding stuff to them,
and having that that be the sort of the Borg co-ops thing of just that. Kind of like they're making the assimilated deflectors, like the space set, as their thing with starships. So they would have access to their, a bunch of different faction ships, but they would all be Borgified, or to some degree. So they would have, they would be able to use a Federation ship, for example, with lots of Borg parts attached to it, and then that would have a singularity type assimilated ship mechanic. So anyway, just as a way of just, allowing a new mini faction to develop.
Well, and it did seem like they sort of set themselves up for that when they created the cooperative. Here's how we could do a friendly Borg faction.
So this completely goes against my idea for a revamped Borg Crown Zone, but I also like your idea.
Okay, my internet's just flipping out.
So, yeah, I mean, other ideas for what they could do for an expansion?
Well, I mean, so this is just kind of something weird I've noticed, is that the story with the Zenkethi has really been dragging its feet, and we keep getting interspersed with other stories, and it sounds like this thing with Torg is going to be yet another kind of a sidestep from the Zenkethi. So I'm wondering if something isn't going on with that, where they're going to feed it into a Zenkethi war, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. Or I was thinking that the one thing about the blogs is, and we kind of talked about this, is that they did sort of reference the Zenkethi as being involved with Torg. So I think this is the whole Torg thing is the explanation of what's going on. So we're going to get another, I don't know if we're going to have another Sela type episode. We
still don't know what those crystals are for.
Yeah, so I think we're going to get the why the Zenkethi are testing all these weapons on different populated worlds, and then that leads into something else with Torg. So I think we're getting the sort of the climax and the lead through to the next thing. Possible.
So, as somebody once said, that the best way to write a story is to start at the ending. I mean, that way you know where you're going, so all you do is figure out how to get there, instead of making up everything as you go along, where you may or may not actually end up with something that.
Yeah. Well, Cryptic's got their plans set out for the story for years and years.
We know that they plan quite a bit ahead, so I'm sure they know where we're going.
Oh, yeah.
But then again, they can always change things midstream. As XR points out in the chat room, they may have changed some things because people like Captain Kumarke. Mm-hmm. It's a character that works, so they use her more. Like the episode where we go find the Kentari.
Yeah, and they do play around with missions and development to sort of work through story beats and sort of change angles and that sort of thing. I think it's just basically
you got to be
whiteboard.
You got to be a little bit flexible.
Oh yeah, they don't have all the dialogue for the next 2 years written. Let's just put it that way, or probably not.
Probably not.
No, but anyway, though, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where this goes because it does feel like. Well, it's kind of the one thing I noticed is that it feels like the Zenkethi story is really dragging its feet when you're playing through it. But one thing I noticed is that I recently went through and completed the Zenkethi arc missions back to back on my Romulan, and it felt a lot more cohesive.
Okay, so maybe it's just the time between that's making it feel longer than it is.
Yeah, because we're sort of used to I think we got spoiled a little bit with the Iconian War because we had a plot that sort of dragged a little bit that had these ups and downs, and we didn't know where it was going to go until the last minute, and that was resolved really relatively quickly. But now we've spent a couple of seasons working on this, so since K13 was added, so right after AOI, so. Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It'll look better if you play the missions back to back. But I think now we're just sort of we're eager to move on because of how the release cadence has been working out.
I recently played through the Temporal Cold War arc, and I was thinking to myself, this works so much better when I don't have to wait 4 weeks between episodes.
Yeah,
but I understand why they do things that way.
Yeah, because each one of these episodes is sort of introduced a new element to it. So we've got the Zenkethi, then we get, first we get the crystals, then we get protomatter, then we get the Zincathi, and then we get our ability to work with protomatter ourselves, and that's kind of the Lucari Kantari episode.
Yeah.
So I think it only would take 1 or 2 more episodes to finish out the arc. 1 potentially, but 2 would, kind of give it the best shot at.
Flesh things out.
So long as we get major actual explanations next episode.
Yeah. I feel like the explanation of why the Zenkethi are doing what they're doing is the turn, and so that needs to happen at least some distance from the end. Otherwise, it's just going to feel rushed.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Gamma Quadrant as an idea for an expansion, which is something that I thought about for a long time, and I'll tell you what I would do is I think it's a ripe area for some kind of exploration system.
Oh yeah,
and that's a tough needle thread for sure to make it good.
But one we know Cryptic has been thinking about for a very long time.
Yeah. So here's my thought, and this is just sort of a broad strokes kind of a thing, is because the Gamma Quadrant, we only went to a few planets on DS9 in the Gamma Quadrant. So it's, I think from the Federation perspective, the Alpha Quadrant powers perspective, it's largely unexplored. So what you do is you start off with a group of sector blocks, and you do exploration type missions within them. You have one of those things where it's a game-wide counter of, how many people are doing these things. And when that fills up, when we reach the goal, a new block of sectors opens up. And there's rewards for doing these things and all of that. And then in that original block of sectors, you have different missions now. Colonization missions, follow-up and exploration stuff that you can do for rewards. And it's like a progression.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good way of selling the initial expansion. I just don't know how you keep that up over time.
That's the problem with that idea.
Because you end up finishing that off. Because for me, exploration.
How long keep that going? That's the question.
Yeah, because you can, and that would sort of be pretty content heavy, where you sort of have a group of assignments or missions or activities that are open for say a couple of weeks, and then just sort of go in. It's difficult to sort of work your way back to that.
True.
Because I think one thing you could do is sort of treat exploration as a new as a general you could start it off in the Gamma Quadrant. In those sector blocks, and then you just open up to the Alpha, Beta, and Delta, where you introduce new activities to do in the sector block. So you basically expand the number of things you can go and scan, find, patrol missions that randomly generate. Because I think we had a good start with alerts, random things you can sort of encounter in the sector block, but you sort of just go one step further with that. So just more types of activities, more random generation of different content items. And just sort of keep building out the sector block system as it is now, and just treat that as exploration.
So Bloodleaf in the chat room is referencing my inspiration for my idea, which is the Isle of Keldanas in World of Warcraft, where basically it was this island that you first go to, and you have a set of quests that you can do, daily quests, that all have to deal with the conflict that's going on in this island. Once enough people have done enough of those daily quests to reach the goal that Blizzard set for it, a new group of daily quests opened and a new area opened. And then another new one, et cetera, et cetera.
So Bloodleaf, I don't think the Lucari
it
are
also
gender
definitely that's the other conversation that's going in our chat room.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Lucari are a single gender species or something.
No,
like
the Kantari definitely aren't.
Yeah.
No.
I think we've only ever met one Lucari.
So.
Yeah.
I think didn't we see some of the crew of Kumarke's ship a little bit in the background of a cutscene?
Possibly.
Walking around.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's just the most recent episode there is that bridge. And there might also be references in the story material too to male Lucari.
Maybe Cryptic just didn't want to have to model a male version of the outfit.
Yeah, that's also part of reasons too. We just haven't had any other Lucari come up.
They built one for the Reputation.
Yeah.
It's not the same as the one the Lucaria though.
Yeah, it's kind of biologically, unless the Lucaria are just sort of all clones, then it's sort of hard to justify how a closely related species, the Kantari, has 2 genders, but you have a completely different genetic setup for the Lucari.
Well, it could be like the Asari in Mass Effect.
But then the Asari didn't have a closely related species that had 2 genders.
This is true. So I'm going to go with the most likely explanation is we just haven't seen a male Lucari.
Yeah.
Other than Caldano, although he's only part Lucari.
Yeah. So anyway,
moving on. Yes.
Just
your thing that you've been working on.
Okay, so what I've been working on is just basically just putting a few ideas together to be able to hand to Cryptic sort of an idea set for how we in the Foundry community might like to see the Foundry improved in a very concrete way that might be even considered an official proposal. So my idea has been to sort of come up with sort of a grounded set of just things that could be done in the course of a season, as a season update. It's kind of like what I think like Endeavors is sort of setting up to be. But as we've had like the Admiralty system, crafting, R&D, most seasons we tend to get like one big system update. R&D, reputations, that sort of thing. Just one sort of big system update, or not even a big system update, but a major system update that opens up new gameplay options. With where Star Trek Online is right now, especially with Endeavors, kind of just adding another type of reward system. Just sort of filling in like spaces, like we're not sort of really hurting for another gameplay update. That the Foundry might be a really good thing to work on at this point as like serious dev time. So my idea has been to really kind of focus on what's limiting players from engaging with Foundry missions, and really work on things that are hurting authors in terms of the ability to produce content. So the 2 sides would be an update of the Foundry UI, the search interface that players work through, a little bit of expansion on the top 3 system, slight, not too much, but just something that works back into the UI update, and then fixing a few critical bugs. Nothing new in the editor, no new features there. Focus on getting the Foundry into basically a bigger part of the community. Kind of like the last season, PvP got a bit of a shot in the arm with the Q revamp and the competitive reputation. So the idea here is to work on the search UI, improve how that works, similar to the Q UI update. Basically, rework search filters, rework the search interface to include more options, and include some new options for what to search for. And my favorite of this bunch is search for things that are like search for nearby Foundry missions that restricts your search to your current social map or your current sector block. So being able to sort through content a little bit easier, search by content items. So right now we've got we've got like combat, space, ground as our search filter items. Similar to foundrymissions.com, include like faction filters. So I want to search for Undine missions. I want to search for temporal missions. I want to search for missions with custom aliens. Other search filter items would be sort of like series, role play, puzzles, that sort of thing. So
I have always kind of wanted to put in a little tag that distinguishes between like Starfleet and Starfleet aligned Romulan, and then like Klingon and Klingon aligned Romulan, so that you can indicate whether it's like for both or one or the other.
And that could be another thing too, just like just a player faction filter category. So this is sort of like me just working through the outline that I've got. I put this out on Twitter, and I'll eventually make a forum thread on this one, because I don't want to just sort of hand off Cryptic my ideas. I want to have us thresh these out. But yeah, just add more options that are directly relevant to what players are trying to get. So Romulan, like Fed Romulan versus Fed, for example, since that's a pretty important one to people, of being able to find Romulan appropriate missions in the Foundry. And then what else was I looking at? Just basically bring back the top 3 system. We need that back. And then one thing I'd like to see is that, like with the search update, have a button on the top 3 pane that brings up a search for all missions that are at that particular system. Now, I don't think that like finding like being able to search independently, like at the start, like being able to like filter by actual location would be that easy to do in terms of just making a good UI, like being able to drop down and select between all systems right from the start. But being able to do that right at the sector block, being able to bring up all missions at a particular location, like Archer System, being able to see everything that's there in one go. For people who don't just want to see top 3, that might be a good thing too. But anyway, of just like bringing some stuff together on the UI, improving that, adding a little bit to top 3, nixing a few big bugs, so space lighting, and then objective progression and map transitions, which we talked about last week. And then the last thing on the proposal would be new community events. So revamp the reward system, sort of build something in there. Some pretty modest. So like a little bit of dilithium, a few fleet marks for reward eligible missions. Have a Foundry event in the calendar that would increase the rewards by 100%, say. And then have a few more things in there as well. So I guess it's basically just looking for feedback on this this list, see if these things are things we really want to hand to Cryptic to say, hey, we want these as a community. And yeah, I can go ahead and once we sort of thrash through this, we post a thing on the forums so people can continue to look back at this. And also for people on the forums who don't come to Twitter to be able to give their feedback as well.
So the only thing that I would say for stuff like this is to manage your expectations.
Oh yeah.
About what might happen. Because these are things that we've been talking about and trying to get in front of Cryptic for years.
Yeah. So I mean, that's why
half a decade.
Yeah.
You know.
So that's why I was sort of really focusing on just the search interface and get that lined up, and then anything with the top 3 would basically be following up from that, and then just critical bug fixes would basically be, well, we got to get these taken care of, at least the space lighting, to be able to sell this as a season, because otherwise we're basically pushing visually subpar content across the board for space maps. So yeah, I'm definitely trying to keep this that's why I did not touch anything in the editor. That's why I didn't, push anything there, because that would be that I can't see happening as any part of one big update. So this would basically be pushing the Foundry, just getting basically give the Foundry search UI a similar treatment that the Q UI just received. And then include some additional layers of community events. So specifically, update the Foundry reward system, have that on the calendar, and then that's basically the just way of making sure that this sort of stays a higher profile thing among players.
Yeah. But what I mean is, it's never bad to post this stuff and talk about this stuff and to try and get this in front of the right eyes. That's always good.
Oh yeah.
Is just don't think of it as they would ever have any kind of obligation to do it.
Oh hell no. Oh hell no.
There are always, in a long running game like this, there are always systems that are gonna fall by the wayside.
Oh, yeah.
The Foundry may be one of them. Or it may not, or maybe at some point something will swing around to we've got time, we've got a season's worth of time here, why don't we go do some stuff with the Foundry? Yeah,
and that's kind of what I was thinking about with where Stowe is right now, is that it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of there are many other systems that really need a big fleshing out. Like exploration is sort of the highest profile one, but is sort of where to move on, like what other systems to revamp. I mean, it just kind of came up that especially with the queues in a better state now, it kind of felt like, well, it might get to that time where it might as well just work on the Foundry. It's sort of like you sort of go down the list of priorities to eventually the point where it's like, oh, you might be easier to sort of talk about getting a Foundry UI revamp in at this point, rather than say 2 years ago where it's like, well, there's a lot else that needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to Cryptic has a very, very finite amount of development time that they have to get for everything. And major things that, like coming out with new content and new reputations and whatnot, and new lockboxes, those are the things that keep the game like continuing to function. So they have to do those. And so then they take the extra time and say, okay, well, what can we work in? How much time do we have from which people? And I mean, so I'm sure it is one of those things that, I mean, I don't think the Foundry is getting left by the wayside, so to speak. We would know it if it was.
Well, that's kind of the feeling I've had recently, is that it kind of is, with the bug accumulation and the space lighting. I mean, it's still going. And also the loss, like the sudden, mysterious, not talked about loss of the top 3 system. That's been really worrying me. So that's why I've been sort of like thinking about, well, how do we sort of move on from this and maybe get the Foundry, basically put in a little bit, like you just get that in a little, basically make our case for why we should, why the Foundry should have a little bit of support at this point, because it does feel like it is getting left behind a little bit.
My word of encouragement is, though, that this is not the first time we've gone through this cycle. And at some point, at several points in our history, we've had that, it feels like the Foundry is being left by the way. So there's some major bug that is just really hammering us, and it does eventually get fixed. I mean,
obviously, Foundry, the major Foundry bugs have almost always persisted for quite a while before they got fixed. So.
Yeah, I think the exception would be the Lights of Zetar, because that was basically the thing.
I don't know. That was around for a little bit.
That was around for a little bit, but it did have a sort of it had a turnaround,
3 or 4 weeks,
or month. It was a while. So anyway, my whole thing on this one was just basically like, well, in case Cryptic ever does sort of approach the idea of revamping the Foundry, just get some ideas from the community side to help inform the decisions that they would make in approaching a new UI. So just give them a little bit of information to say, hey, this is how we would approach that. Here's the things that we would think would help players find new missions, or would encourage them to spend more time with the Foundry. And that's kind of the big selling point, is there's a countless hours of Foundry content out there. If Cryptic could better exploit that, in terms of leveraging that for
getting it in front of more players and making it easier to access.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically just more content, continued interest, because all this stuff's coming out all the time, and just sort of filling up the windows in their own dev cycle with more Foundry content. If the Foundry's more accessible, it's a bigger part of the game, then that could potentially make Stowe feel a lot more lively relative to other MMOs. Even so, this might make the STO more competitive, more broadly, because it's something that it's well developed from our end of being able to produce high quality missions. It's just getting that out there with a little bit more work. It could pay dividends for Cryptic. Anyway, that was just the argument for it.
So I would post on the forums and see what kind of feedback you get from the other authors. I would prepare for a strongly worded post from Captain Hunter. Because he has had a long running post in the art forum actually about a potential idea to revamp the search UI, basically to start with categories, and then give you a list of missions for years.
I definitely know that we've talked about this very
and it frustrates him that hasn't gotten any traction.
So just basically just put this out there, just as our thing. Hey, we're thinking about this still.
So something that has come up in the chat room a little bit is a lack of support shouldn't be taken for motives. It's
there's
that
other stuff going on.
Other stuff that they are doing, and it's not because they hate the Foundry.
No. And
far from it. I mean, most of the ones that one of the ones that we've talked to personally, me and Dragoon and other Foundry authors, they like the Foundry. They like seeing we do.
It's just that.
I think it's just that it's
Duncan is having internet issues again. I think.
I think it's a lot of requests and needs and whatnot, and only a tiny little spigot that is the actual stuff that they can manage to
and
get through.
There's a good there's a good example of that, which is, something which kind of got to Thomas a little bit this week, is, everybody seeing the good work he did on the Constitution and then immediately requesting other things in a huge volume of other things.
Yeah.
So, lots of people want lots of things for this game, and Cryptic can only do so many of those things, and they've got their own ideas.
Yeah, it's just one of those facts of Stowe. Cryptic is not a huge developer.
No, they're not Blizzard.
What I think their staff, at least the Stowe team, still sits around, around 50 people?
I believe that's a number that we've heard. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is right now. Game companies, from what I understand, they kind of expand and contract quite regularly.
Yeah, with projects. Although I think, I know the devs have talked in the past that they Stowe is kind of one of those weird games that remains really eerily consistent. So I think they've got a
They do seem to have quite a lot of people who have worked for them for a long time now.
Well, it's not even that. I think it's also the players. Because Stowe gains players at the same rate it loses players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just have some inclement weather moving in, so my ISP just blipped out for a sec.
Fun.
Sorry about that.
But why don't we move it on, because we have a little bit of time left, and we need to get to something that we forgot to do last week, which is do a review of the final mission for our challenge, which is Odd Old Ends by Kuchelain.
Yes.
Or Stowe Shane, as he is on Twitter.
All right, so
because we have sadly neglected this mission, and we need to talk about it.
Okay, and if I happen to drop off again, then it's again just the weather right now.
Fine. Okay.
We will assume you were sucked up by a tornado.
Yes. I will land safely somewhere, and get back to you guys as soon as possible.
So, Dragoon, you've probably played this most recently.
Yeah, although it's been a week now, so my memory is.
You were prepared to do it last week, but my abiding memory of this mission, sort of central piece of it, was the big maze.
So yes. You are called into a system because of a distress signal, right? And
I believe it's something like that. Yes.
So you're picking up this distress signal, and so you beam down and find that everything is basically being like massive earthquakes, and everything's shaking apart, and you find evidence of a crashed Federation starship, which turns out to be the Infinity.
Mm-hmm. This was the one I was praising because you come across the nacelle of it, and it's, I immediately recognize it as, that's the, the old Talus sunk into the terrain there, but it worked so well. It looked really convincing. It was like, that is perfect for a TOS nacelle of a crashed ship, and it immediately took me back to the tutorial mission for the agency yesterday.
So you go around the surface, kind of like looking through all of these settlements, and can't find anyone. And you eventually make your way underground, and you are basically caught by this native species. You do some running around the maze, and then you're caught by this native species, and basically it's revealed that they basically lure ships down to salvage them and acquire their technology so they can fix their ship and get home.
But it's been going for a few generations, so
yeah,
they're kind of stuck in this cycle of constantly preying on people.
Yeah.
So you're offered a choice to basically you offer to help them, and you have a choice of basically either like attacking them or going along peacefully and trying to help them rebuild their ship. I wasn't paying close enough attention to what button I pressed, and I hit attack him, so I ended up killing him and going up. And when I got to the surface, I could see it was a map that had the alien ship on it, except it broke for me there. Oh. And although all I could do was the final objective, like there was no other options to talk to anyone or no instructions about what to do, and like you couldn't do anything, and so all I could do was just end the mission.
I ran into something similar at the end where there was actually a bit of dialogue that I missed that I probably could have done because it was outside the objective plan storyboard. So I had to ask him about it. He said, "Oh, it was there. You could go up and talk to these guys," and there you go.
Yeah. Well, there was instructions saying that there was like that. There's this final objective, but you can go around and do stuff, and there wasn't anything for me to actually do. No, I couldn't talk to anybody.
I did that path of helping them fix their ship, so I was able to go through that part without issue during my run.
I also helped them. I'm not a mean person like Dragoon. I'm a good Starfleet captain.
Between us, we explored all the quantum possibilities.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, at the end you have the option to help them, and then you hit the beam end point, and then you're free to leave. So yeah, this one I liked because it did sort of like it pushed the it sort of did a little bit of world building. So some definite story details about the alien species, and I did like a few of the cues with the or the trigger sets with the maze section. So the child running in front of you. I thought that was sort of another sort of good angle on sort of changing between generations, reconciling with the species when you chose not to kill them. But there's some interesting sci-fi going on there. And then I did really like the final ship build because it happened to be something I hadn't thought of before. There were two things that I saw in this mission. I was like, it was
a good use of ground scale ship. Yeah, and it was the Scryer.
Also it was the two intel ships built into each other, and I think that worked really well for a sort of a landed alien spaceship.
Yeah.
I just think that like on this one, he had all the options at the end, and I think it could have still made a really strong mission because you're playing this as rhyme fed or fed. So choosing not to kill them is kind of the basic choice. So I think it could have been weaved into the story rather than making it an option, but it did at the very least show good use of optional triggered objectives to sort of go through that path. The other thing I did like, and this is just tiny meat detail, is when you confront the alien species. You look up and there's a dome made out of rotated archways. I saw that. I was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that before. So of all the missions in the Infinity Challenge, I did latch on to the builds in this one a little bit more than
very good map building.
Because there was.
I really liked that maze, in part because I had to double back a couple of times. Went down the wrong hallway, but not too many times, and that's kind of a hard thing to judge, I'm sure, when you're making a maze, but I didn't find it overly I wasn't frustrated by it.
Yeah. So I think this one had the custom builds on this one were they complemented the mission. So and then the writing was pretty solid. I did like the design on the alien species, and I did kind of like the idea of, and this is something I had been thinking about for my Enterprise B mission, of using the idea of this missing starship, not to necessarily make a mission about it, but just using it as a launching off point for something else. And I think I latched onto it in this mission just because it did sort of feel like it was sort of making the Star Trek universe a little bigger, kind of like an interesting sort of foil to the other two, where those were sort of going really far outside the universe, and this one was sort of dealing with a little bit of the nitty gritty and just sort of presenting almost like a TOS style or TOS style or even classic sci-fi style alien species.
It was of all the three missions, it was the one that probably was least about the Infinity itself.
Yeah.
It just kind of used that as a vehicle to go off then on a different story.
Yeah. And
which is fine. You know, I didn't object to that as part of the challenge. I just said, you know, tell the story of what happened to the ship, and you know, he used that as kind of like a small part. The initiating action was what happened to this ship. The rest of the story is, you know, goes off in this other direction.
Yeah, and I did like that, and it was something I was already thinking about for the Enterprise B. So it's like, oh, okay, it's like seeing how a mission like that could work out, and I think it worked out pretty well. My thing would just be at the end, it was just the choice to make those objectives optional. I think overcomplicated things a little bit in the mechanical progression. Because even like when I was doing the optional objectives, it was still a little tough to do the navigation and hit all the points on the ship.
It's hard to do that in the Foundry. I know because I've done it before. in the mission that you played, in fact, over there.
Yeah,
and I struggled with, you know, the idea of how to make choices matter across maps, across map transitions.
I've done that once, and I kept it simple and sort of stuck it to dialogue, and it was sort of like choice of. There was two sets of choices, binary, and they didn't hugely affect the mission. It was kind of like a Mass Effect style choice. So I think that for over there, I think it worked because it was sort of like you're in a closed environment. But I think once you put it in an open environment, have an alien spaceship there, and then have the general idea that you're going to a completely different part of the map, you're just sort of, you're way, way in the open. You can't really control how that's working out as well as you can if you're just sort of working with an interior map.
Well, I think the best way to have done it perhaps was to resolve everything before you get to that map.
Mm-hmm.
You get to the story to a point that whether you decided to help them or kill them, you get to the same point in the story where it ends with you talking to the people on that ship. So then you could just do that last map as more straightforward A, B, C, D, E objectives.
Yeah. So yeah, that could have worked. So yeah, that would just be my one bit of feedback on this one. Would just be, it just, the ending, it's sort of like, it was one of those things where it's like at that point you gotta kind of have to work through it. Like it just as the author, it's like and it worked for me, but it was just
I got what the author intended with all of it. So I mean, I wasn't left confused or anything.
And I do like it was just sort of, it was ambitious in the choice. It just felt like it didn't quite work out as well if it was a little bit more straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still appreciated, that effort.
Yeah, and I think definitely one of the more ambitious in terms of map building. Yeah,
because the other ones used. Either
they made use of the Fed interior, the Coney interior, and they had builds, each of them, but I think not quite as elaborate as that maze.
No, the maze was that's a pretty good one, especially with like how that was built too, using the Romulan. Basically having the Romulan ruins there as just when you're approaching as a cavern, and then at least like, oh wait a minute, this is a civilization, and it just sort of it worked with the visuals.
Yeah.
It had a point of discovery. So yeah, anyway, that was old ends, and I really enjoyed this one.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed all three of the entries in the challenge. I think we had a really good variety of approaches to how to do that prompt. So that was very much appreciated from all of the three authors.
Yeah.
One of the things that's kind of fun to watch with these challenge missions and challenge missions in general is just because usually it's built under constraint, usually time constraint or theme constraint, but just to kind of see how authors deal with those kind of restraints. I mean, so usually in a time constraint, you've got to cut back somewhere, and it's watching where different authors will choose to focus their efforts and where they say, I just don't have time for this.
Yeah. I don't know how that... Oh, wait, no, I do know how that featured in Apex. I cut down on the plot. Bad monster, run away from him.
Still had a lot of maps in that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I only had three maps that I had to custom build. Only 3. Well, yeah, and then I had to do the crazy stuff with Starbase Magellan Space Map and build a second map on that one. But that worked out fine. I pre-planned.
It's funny because I ended up...
I think I only... Go ahead.
I ended up cutting my challenge map down to just 3 maps, and I kind of actually decided that before I started building everything. Is like, I have just enough time to do 3, so it's got to happen in 3.
Yeah, and I was
I can't remember if I cut down on anything on mine. Maybe I should have, because it didn't win. So
yeah. And then for Apex, the one thing I did also have in mind was a clear idea of how those builds would go. So the complicated stuff, like the big map transitions on the space map and then the last ground map, I built that from the beginning. So I had a method, and then it allowed me to build those really quickly and not have to sort of continuously reset new trigger objectives and kind of play around with it. It's like, okay, I just built it, then let's move on. But it's going to be really, really interesting. I'm really excited about the 26th Century Anthology.
Yes.
Because and especially if we go to a new galaxy, we've got the future fed KDF and Romulans. We've got a lot of options there, and I know what I'm planning at this point. And we'll see how that goes.
So I think we'll get into that on the next show, because we'll want to start getting real into it, so that we can kind of have it ready to go right after the next downtime.
Yeah, and I think that'll be
kind of the plan.
Just one quick thing on that one. Do we, just as a point of decision right now, do we want to give a lot of information on what the Fed, the Klingons, and the Romulans are like, or just leave that open to authors?
I think we should kind of leave that open.
Okay.
We can kind of go into what we think is sort of the state of affairs at the moment, but then just leave everything else open to interpretation. You don't want to build too many walls for people.
Yes.
Even though we've actually come up with an awful lot of ideas about them.
Yes, we did. But it actually kind of worked with all the stuff that we built into AEI really worked. So, hopefully this one will work too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you got to do it just far enough, not too far, not, but just far enough.
Yeah. And as far as my plans on that one going, I'm definitely not competing in any challenges for that one. I will have a mission, and I might have that. It's going to be a big build one. So I'll have that started well in advance. So hopefully shipping around the same time just to accompany people. Make the anthology project a little bit bigger.
So we got time for one last thing tonight, and I want to talk about the thing that we were discussing on Twitter this week. Was that just yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just yesterday.
It's been a busy week.
I'm losing all track of time here.
It's been a busy day.
Okay, so we got linked a trailer, it went public, a trailer from the German Foundry community that showed off a lot of their cool maps. They've got some very talented authors over there, and so we started thinking of kind of a general Foundry trailer that we could do, and we got Zeph Films interested in doing it, and so I think, and Johnny Snowball is very interested, and so we thought, what we should do is we should show off various maps from all around the Foundry community. Have authors, think about what is the best map you've ever built, and then submit a demo file for that, and then Zeph Films can go through them and make some beauty shots of them and make it all into a trailer.
Just one.
Just one.
It's that might be
asking
difficult
us to choose
pick
between our children.
Yeah, really.
I would encourage people to submit maps from published missions.
Yeah. For me, it's basically
so that they can play what they see in the trailer.
Yeah, and for me, it's going to be it's kind of like no question at this point, because just what I'm known for now for Stowe, it's going to be that open ground map on Apex for mine.
That is a good one.
It's also not space, so I'm not going to get that nervous. There's no space lighting twitch. I'll be happy with it. It'll look good. It'll look fine.
So the nice thing is, it's really easy to share demo files, because all the files, of course, are kept server side. So the demo file on your computer is just text, really. And so you can give it to somebody and they can play it.
Yeah, so for what people who might not know is that we're talking about demo record files. So it's a utility in Stowe that allows you, like the theater mode in Halo, to sort of replay elements of a gameplay section that you've recorded. That's basically reenacting all the gameplay events. So it basically goes through that same sequence. So it's not having to sort of render it as a video, but it's just basically a playback from the game data.
Yeah.
So we can share that information after recorded and then put that together. Well, someone takes videos from that.
And you can build camera paths with it, so you get these nice smooth shots, rather than just trying to control it yourself, which gets a little herky jerky.
One of the nice things is that you can set up all these camera paths, but you can like give the demo file to someone, and they can basically fly around through the scene and play it back and set up their own camera paths. And this is after the scene's already been recorded, and so it's basically like recording everything in 3 dimensionals. So they can set up everything and after the fact and just play it back.
So this obviously is not, we don't have a timetable on this. So, if you're in progress of building a great map that you think is going to be awesome, but it's not out yet, there's a little time here because we only just had this idea yesterday.
Yeah. So it's just the intention of putting together a Foundry trailer just to show off, hey, this is what the Foundry is.
Yeah.
And I should also point out that Ambassador Kale seemed very interested in it. And if this comes to fruition, he wanted a copy.
Yeah. Because that's kind of what happened with the German community, because one of the person who made the trailer wasn't I don't think it was the German. I'm not going to try pronouncing that. It shouldn't be difficult to pronounce that name.
The German CM.
The German CM. The video itself was hosted by one of the Foundry authors who's occasionally appeared on the English side, who's done some stuff. So he put together a tutorial thing. He was kind of like the person who worked out how to do the spell check through Foundry data. So it basically seems like they did they did a community trailer, and then their community manager basically did a PR thing for the Foundry, and that's how this came about, and that's how we caught on about it.
We want to do one too.
Yes, we want to follow their lead.
Mm-hmm. And Zeph Films is just a wizard with demo record and gets great video, very high quality. So that's I think he'd be a good choice to do the cinematography for us. We just need to get him some maps. So I think what we're going to do is make a thread on the forums, and then people can start thinking about what map do I want to submit, and then get a nice demo record file of it. One thing I would encourage people to do is if you're doing a map with a lot of triggers, what you're going to want to do is duplicate that project and strip away a lot of those triggers, because demo record, if you have an object on your map, it shows that object no matter if you have set it to appear and disappear at various times.
Yeah. You also have to get rid of all custom Foundry NPCs, because those do not record properly.
Those do not display.
Okay, so it's basically just sort of make a clean map. And you're probably not going to show off any gameplay unless that happens to be with default NPCs. Basically none of mine. No, there's some Space Combat that would work. But anyway, though, it's just one of those things where it's just sort of like you might have to create a one map, almost kind of like what you see is people creating an RP map, and you just create that project file, you spawn in it, maybe sort of hide yourself as best as possible, create a demo record section of that. You just basically type in the commands, start, stop, and then you have that file go into the folder, pull that out, and then donate it to whatever hosting solution we come up with.
Yeah, and when we go,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, when we go pull the trigger on this, we will probably post a set of instructions on the forum and basically walk through everything you need to do to get this recording.
Yeah. Hopefully it shouldn't be too daunting for people, especially if you're comfortable building in Foundry. Yeah, everything we do in the Foundry is going to be more complicated.
Because to take the demo file, all you got to do is type in the keyboard, the console shortcut.
Yeah.
So, and then he does all the filming on his end. So, there we go. And we might pick a couple of maps to do some action scenes on as well, not just to intersperse with the beauty shots.
Yeah,
that's worth.
So yeah, and those ones you just want to pick that. Hey, these are default NPCs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically for my one, I'm just basically going to spawn, let it run for a few seconds, and then hit stop. You just need the map.
So that's a project that we're going to be working on in the coming weeks.
Hey.
And we want to hopefully get some good participation in that because we obviously have 100,000 Foundry missions, and we want to see if we can get some of the best of them in map building and show it off.
And you sure we're just one?
Just one. Because we want to get as big of as many different authors as we can. So limit one. All right. I think we'll go ahead and end it there for the evening. So Dragoon, if you want to put up our contact info.
All right. We can be reached by email at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at foundryroundtab. Dragoon can be reached at Dragoon1701. Duncan can be reached at Gorgonops_SSF. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman. And I, of course, can be reached at Greendragoon.
All right, and everybody remember the thing that we didn't have time to discuss this time, which is Dragoon has actually been working on part 3 of Shadows of Midas. Keep him honest, keep him working. Keep asking, where's part 3? Yeah. When is part 3 going to come out?
Yeah, because Legion of Myth has recently streamed part 1, and I assume they're going to be soon streaming part 2. So yeah, I mean, just keep building the community out there saying, we want part 3.
I think that's pretty much how we got him to do part 2.
Yeah. Draw focus away from the fact that I haven't made Epic part 2 yet.
My character is still stranded in the Delta Quadrant or Gamma Quadrant or wherever you sent them. So
Edge of the Galaxy. At that point, which quadrant is semantics?
And XR is saying, where's your Infinity mission? And yes, this is exactly the same thing. Someday. Soon.
Yes. The Foundry Roundtable is quickly becoming the someday podcast. Yes.
So what you're saying is we kind of all have to keep each other honest.
Yes. I'll keep working on mine if you keep working on yours.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's just as well. Right. The map I was working on wasn't quite in a state where I wanted to really show it off. I'm hoping to get a little further along and then get some good screenshots.
We'll make sure that you have some next week.
Yeah. But what you had was good. So
yeah, we like it.
Yeah, it's coming together.
Anyway, for now, we will say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.